Welcome to the Cody Leach Podcast, Episode 4. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Cody Leach Podcast. Getting really light on things to talk about, but I managed to find a few things to discuss. Starting off with Saw 8. So Saw 8 is reportedly to be directed by Peter and Michael Spierig, who was the co-directors of Daybreakers and Predestination, both really cool movies with Ethan Hawke. Daybreakers is a vampire movie, and Predestination is one of the most unique science fiction time travel movies that you're going to find. So check both of those out if you haven't seen them. But these guys are supposed to be directing Saw 8. So it's going to be titled Saw Legacy. And it's supposed to start shooting this September with a script from the Sorority Row writers. So good news that they're directing it, but bad news that the Sorority Row guys are writing it because that movie sucked. So if you're a Saw fan, you got another one to look forward to. And I'm sure if that one is a success, you'll probably have a 9 and a 10 and a 22 and a 30. But Saw 8. Kingsman: The Golden Circle. So Kingsman: The Secret Service was one of a big surprise of a couple years ago. It was Matthew Vaughn's movie, and it was kind of like a fun play on James Bond. And if you haven't seen it, it's going to contain some spoilers of what I'm going to talk about. So go ahead and skip to the next segment. But Kingsman: The Golden Circle may have Colin Firth returning as his character, Harry Hart. So anybody that's seen the movie knows that about 2/3 of the way through, he gets shot in the face. And it's very clear that he's dead. They leave no room for any kind of, he lived or he didn't actually get killed or anything like that. It was pretty definitive that he's dead. But they came out with the first teaser poster for Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and they had a pretty recognizable pair of glasses with some words behind it that said something along the lines of, "The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated." And everybody that saw that poster was like, come on, dude, really? They're just teasing us with that stuff. They're not really going to bring him back. Well, now one of the people who is starring in the movie, Pedro Pascal, posted on his Instagram a photo of him kind of hiding behind Colin Firth, and Colin Firth is in total costume for his character Harry Hart. So it looks like they found some way to keep him. I don't know if it's going to be like a resurrection, or if he had a twin, or if he's just, leaving videos behind, kind of like Jamie Kennedy's character on Scream, or I have no idea how they're going to do it, but look forward to having some more Colin Firth in the next Kingsman, which is good news as long as they do it right. Suicide Squad. So this is the new DC movie that's going to be coming out next month, and it follows the gang of criminals who is sent out to take care of some missions for the government. Otherwise, they die, kind of like Escape from New York. They have some kind of a bomb or some kind of device planted in them that pretty much blackmails them into doing some missions for the government. So you got Rick Flag, you got Killer Croc, you got Katana, Captain Boomerang, and of course Harley Quinn and the Joker, who is probably the main draw for the movie. Now the director David Ayer has come out and said that Batman, so people have pretty much found out that Batman's going to be in Suicide Squad. To what degree we don't really know, but they've showed scenes in the trailer, and there's Ben Affleck showed up on set and recorded some scenes. But David Ayer is saying that Batman's role in the movie is going to be a lot different than anything you've ever seen from Batman. So every other movie that we've seen Batman in, we see the story through Batman's eyes, through his POV. He's the protagonist and everybody else is around him. Well, Suicide Squad, we're following the villains. So Batman in this movie is going to be basically like the boogeyman. Batman is supposed to be this object of fear, and he's supposed to be like this rumor, this legend in Gotham that people hear about, but unless you really see him, you really don't know if he's out there or not. So Batman's going to be showing up, and he's going to be kind of like I'm imagining how Rob Zombie did The Devil's Rejects, where the good guys are kind of twisted around to be the bad guys from the POV of the movie. So that's a pretty cool concept that Batman's going to be kind of shown from our eyes from the villain. So we look forward to seeing what they're going to be doing with Suicide Squad. I hope it's going to be really good, and I believe it comes out on August 2nd or August 4th, so right around the corner. Alright, so in a previous episode I was talking about how Universal is trying to reboot their classic monster movies into a shared universe. They have Tom Cruise he's going to be in the Mummy movie, which is shooting right now. They've got Johnny Depp slated to play the Invisible Man. I believe Russell Crowe is either casted or being talked to about playing Dr. Jekyll and then Mr. Hyde. And I've also heard that Angelina Jolie is in talks to play the Bride of Frankenstein. Well, the newest piece of news coming out of this whole monster shared universe is none other than Javier Bardem is being eyed to star as Frankenstein's monster. So everybody knows Javier Bardem is he played the villain in Skyfall. He played the villain Shiger in No Country for Old Men. I believe he won an Oscar for that. If not, he just got nominated. But Javier Bardem is a great actor and a great villain playing actor. So that would be really cool to see him play Frankenstein's monster. Now, I don't know if that's going to be like a standalone movie or if he's just going to be kind of a side character or show up here and there in these movies to kind of tie them all together. Kind of like Hawkeye or, the Black Widow in the Marvel movies, just kind of like a side character. But they haven't quite announced what they're going to be doing with that yet, but that is good news if they get him casted, and that does nothing but excite me more for this monster shared universe that they got going on. So when Sony had all these email hacks last year, when they had all their troubles financially and their troubles with the Spider-Man franchise, and they had the snippets come out about wanting to merge the Men in Black and the 21 Jump Street movies, there was a piece of news in there that got leaked where they were talking about possibly having another male-led Ghostbusters movie starring Channing Tatum and Chris Pratt. And a lot of people thought that he was either going to be something that they're going to do on the side and eventually tie in with this new Ghostbusters that just came out this past week starring Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, or possibly they were just going to have it on the back burner in case this Paul Feig movie really fails. Then they also have another Ghostbusters ready to churn out that will hopefully be better received. Well, now Ivan Reitman, who was, I believe he's the one who directed the original Ghostbusters, and he produced this new one. He pretty much holds the rights to Ghostbusters. He's coming out saying that this whole male-led Ghostbusters with Channing Tatum and Chris Pratt was never real, that it was all just, fake. And to me, I don't know if I quite believe that or not, because that was a really big story for a while there, and if it was that false and that, that much of a rumor that had no real water held to it, I'd imagine he would have came out then talking about it. But to me, it seems like now that this female-led Ghostbusters has got such mixed response, where you have some people defending it, some people really hating it, that he's just trying to do a little bit of not damage control, but not add fuel to the fire. He's not trying to say, oh yeah, we're still doing this other male-led Ghostbuster. He wants everybody to kind of make sure that they have all their focus and all their eggs in the basket of this Paul Feig franchise, if it continues to be a franchise. So, to me, I think it was an idea at one time. They were at least writing it, but they're putting all their eggs into this Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy basket. The Founder. Now, this is the movie coming out with Michael Keaton, where he plays Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, and Nick Offerman and John Carroll Lynch play Dick and Mac McDonald, respectively. Those are the two brothers who created the McDonald's restaurant. And the trailer to the movie is out on YouTube. You can look at it. It looks like it's going to be a really cool drama. It looks kind of like in the vein of The Social Network. And they have relocated this movie's release date to December 16th to get it primed for Oscar season. So that's really good news. That means that they're really confident in it. They know that it's a good movie. And I love seeing that Michael Keaton has just, year after year now, he's just nailing these Oscar roles. He's one of those guys that he had a lot of movies that I love in the 80s. And then, he's real famous for playing Batman. And then he kind of just went away for a long time. And you never really heard anything about Michael Keaton. You never really saw him in too much. I think he popped up in White Noise in like the early 2000s, and that was about it. And then he slowly started kind of dipping here and there into a few movies. A few little small roles. He was in The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg and a couple other things. He was in RoboCop. And then he comes out with Birdman, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, but a lot of people liked it apparently because it was a very popular movie. It won Best Picture. and he should have won Best Actor over The Theory of Everything. But the next year he comes out with Spotlight, and he wins Best Picture again. And now he's going to be in The Founder, which is getting pushed for Oscar. So I think it's before long we're going to see Michael Keaton holding a statue. And I'm really looking forward to The Founder, and I'm glad to see that they're confident in it and they're moving it to Oscar season. So I'm looking forward to seeing this movie. The Dark Tower. So this is a movie that has been in the works since about 2007, and it passed through where J.J. Abrams was supposed to be bringing it to the screen at one point, and then it passed through Ron Howard, and now it's being handled, written and directed by Nikolai Arcel. And I'm not too familiar with this guy, so I don't know if he's had anything major that I've seen. But The Dark Tower is a series of novels by Stephen King, and like I said, they've been trying to get it into a movie since 2007, and now it is coming out. It's filming right now, and we have Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba in the main two roles, which is a badass couple of actors. They're filming in South Africa and New York, and The Dark Tower tells the story of the fallen land of Midworld through the eyes of Roland Deschain, and he's played by Idris Elba, a sort of frontiersman knight whose primary weapon is not a sword but a pair of revolvers. He's on a quest to save his decaying world by reaching the tower that stands at the nexus point in time and space. Walter Paddock, played by McConaughey, an ageless deceiver and sorcerer, also seeks to reach the tower and rule over its seemingly infinite kingdoms. So it sounds very interesting. I've never read it. It would probably be very difficult for me to go and read it right now because I think it's 5 or 6 books that are pretty decent sized. So there's a lot of story that they're going to put into this. I don't know if this is going to be all 5 or 6 novels crammed into one movie, or if this is just going to be like a part 1. But it sounds really interesting, and it doesn't really sound like the typical Stephen King premise to me. It sounds very fantasy. But that could be a good thing. Stephen King, some of the best movies out there are based off Stephen King novels. And he's had some stinkers, but he's had some really great ones. So this could either be something that is way overblown, and a lot of people are going to be pissed that they cut out a lot of the story. I mean, obviously, if they're going to be cutting 6 novels into a 2.5 hour movie, they're going to be cutting out a lot. So they're either going to really piss off all the people who are big fans of this series, or they might walk away with something really cool. That's going to depend on the writers and the directors and how much they really want to adapt from the page. But it is slated to be released on February 17th, 2017, which is an interesting release date, but we're starting to see the summer movie season isn't really only in the summer anymore. We had Deadpool, which is so far one of the biggest hits this year, come out in February. Batman v Superman came out in March, so these months where they used to be kind of the dumping ground are starting to become like an early access into the summer movie season. So we will see in 2017 how this Dark Tower movie turns out. Alright guys, moving on to trailer talk. I have 2 trailers to talk about that I saw in the theaters in front of Ghostbusters. The first one is Inferno, starring Tom Hanks and directed by Ron Howard. Now this is the 3rd movie in this Da Vinci Code trilogy with Robert Langdon, I believe, is the character of Tom Hanks. Now I'll be honest, I did not watch all of the Da Vinci Code. I remember when it came out, I didn't get into it, and I don't even think I made it halfway through it before I turned it off, and I never revisited it. So I never saw Angels and Demons either, which was the sequel, and I probably don't plan on watching this one either because I don't see the point of starting at the 3rd installment, and I don't know if these stories all tie together, if they're all standalone, kind of like James Bond, but the trailer did look cool. Now, it had the stories following Robert Langdon. He awakens in a hospital room in Florence, Italy, with no memory as to what has transpired over the last few days. He suddenly finds himself again the target of a major manhunt, but with the help of Dr. Sienna Brooks and his knowledge of symbology, Langdon will try to regain his freedom and lost memories, all while solving the most intricate riddle he's ever faced. This is coming out on October 28, 2016. You can watch the trailer on YouTube right now. It does look pretty cool, but like I said, I don't know how much I'll enjoy it if I don't know the story of the first 2. But if you're a fan of Da Vinci Code, if you're a fan of Angels and Demons, you got another movie to look forward to. The second trailer that I saw was actually pretty intriguing. This is called The Space Between Us. And I'm not sure if this is based on a novel or not. I believe it is. But it stars Asa Butterfield. And it tells the story of a child who is born on Mars. Basically, his mom is on this shuttle going to Mars and then realizes after she gets there that she's pregnant. And she's stuck on Mars for this mission that she's on. She's not coming back. So the child's born on Mars. The mom dies. And he lives on Mars his entire life until his teens. And he has this little pen pal on Earth that he talks to over the internet. And he decides to go to Earth. He goes to Earth. He starts seeing all the things on Earth for the first time and experiencing everything for the first time. He falls in love with this girl, obviously, and then his body starts to reject Earth's conditions, being that he's born and used to, Mars's gravity and Mars's atmosphere. So this movie looked really interesting. It's either going to be a little bit sappy and too much tugging on your heartstrings, or it could be a really neat little blend of kind of like a romantic dramedy mixed with a little sci-fi. So it looked pretty interesting. It's coming out December 21st of this year, and like I said, the trailer is going to be on YouTube if you want to go check it out. It does look really interesting, so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how that movie turns out. Alright guys, ending out this episode, I do have a few viewer questions. So Rich Leach asks, have any updates on the new Die Hard movie or Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Conan again? Well, I don't really have anything new, but I can tell you what I do know. Die Hard Year 1 is what they're calling this newest Die Hard movie, and I don't think they've had any new information come out since January of this year, so this is the last I've heard of it. It's going to be directed by Len Wiseman, who's famous for the Underworld movies, and he directed the fourth Die Hard movie, Live Free or Die Hard, which some people didn't like. I liked the fourth one a lot. And I think he's a really good action director. And he did the remake to Total Recall, which is another movie that a lot of people didn't like, but I actually thought it was pretty decent. So Len Wiseman's directing it. Bruce Willis is supposed to come back, at least for part of the movie, because the way that they are pitching this is that it's going to be a prequel and a sequel. And it will explore John McClane's origin and the beginning of his romance with Holly, his wife. And it's going to bounce between prequel and sequel segments, with the sequel segment starring Bruce Willis, the prequel segment starring whoever they cast as a young Bruce Willis. And it's going to take place in New Year's 1979, and the way they're writing it supposedly is that the 70s storyline is going to have impact on whatever the present-day storyline with Bruce Willis is. And no casting for the young John McClane yet. And to be honest, I think this is a really, really, really stupid idea. I was extremely disappointed with the last Die Hard movie, A Good Day to Die Hard. I don't even acknowledge it. I bought the Die Hard set I got the Die Hard set for Christmas, and I consider it, 4 movies in a coaster. So I don't think I'll see myself ever watching that movie again, that it was so bad. And I'm really hoping that they are going to end this series out on a high note, because especially with the way that Bruce Willis has taken his career, where he just doesn't really take his role seriously anymore, and he just kind of mails in everything. I think he really only has one more Die Hard movie in him. So I imagine whatever they do next is going to be the last one. So they either need to pass it off to somebody else, which it looks like that's what they're kind of trying to do in this one, which again I'm not a big fan of, because I don't want to see anybody but Bruce Willis play John McClane. Or they need to give you one really, really good Die Hard to tie everything together. Now, the idea that they were tossing around before they started announcing that this Die Hard Year 1 was what they were going with, was that they were going to have like the Nakatomi Building anniversary. And he was going to go to LA for this anniversary, like a 10-year, 20-year anniversary. And then terrorists were going to attack that anniversary, which to me sounds like a perfect setup for the final chapter of Die Hard. It would have brought everything full circle. He could have been back at the Nakatomi Building again. I think they could have done something really cool with that, and it sounds like a way better idea than what they're going with now. But we haven't heard anything since January, so I don't know. It's possible they're tossing this out because everybody was pissed off whenever they announced it. It's possible that maybe it's just kind of on the back burner until Bruce Willis gets done with whatever Red Box movie he's currently filming. But we'll find out before long, I'm sure, before the end of this year at least, whether or not they're going forward with this or they're going to be scrapping it and doing something else. But Die Hard Year 1 is what they're going to be calling it, so look out for news on that one. And as far as Conan, not too much is known about Conan. It's going to be called The Legend of Conan, supposedly. And they've been tossing around ideas about this movie since 2012. And Arnold was interviewed earlier this year, and they asked him about it. And he still claims that there's moving on it and that he's involved. But Arnold Schwarzenegger also says this about just about every movie that he's supposed to be doing. You know, he still claims that they're doing a Twins sequel with Eddie Murphy. He still claims that even though everybody destroyed Terminator Genesis, that they're still going forward with another one. So you have to kind of take Arnold's comments with a grain of salt. And supposedly the last that they said about this movie was that the script was finished and they're looking for a director. And that was, I think, 3 or 4 months ago. So I don't know if anything else has moved on it. I would like to see him come back as Conan, you know, do like a older, grizzled Conan with like a long beard or something like that. I think that would be something cool that Arnold could do. But they are also probably hesitant about putting too much money into this, because as much as I love Arnold, since he's come back from his, you know, political career, he hasn't sold a whole lot of tickets. You know, he had The Last Stand movie that bombed. He had Sabotage that bombed, which honestly wasn't a very good movie. He had the Terminator Genesis that bombed. He had Escape Plan with Stallone that bombed. So he hasn't really had anything mildly even successful since he's come back from politics. But hopefully The Legend of Conan, or at least something else that they might have him attached to, will get him back into the limelight, or at least give him some good roles, kind of like how Sylvester Stallone has now, where, you know, he maybe should do a little bit more dramatic and not quite the slam bang action movies that he's known for. Try something a little bit different. But look out for The Legend of Conan. Hopefully we'll see some news on that here coming soon. My next viewer question comes from Abbott Skelding. I have 2 of them. Music-related question. What do you think of the Hollywood Vampires album? To be honest, Abbott, I'll have to let you know when I listen to it. I haven't really given it a shot yet. You know, I love Alice Cooper, but after he kind of went back to his, you know, his older style music after the 2000s, when he was more the heavy kind of era, when he did Brutal Planet and he did Dragon Town, I kind of lost interest to a degree. I kept up with it a little bit, but you know, the Brutal Planet and Dragon Town sound was really what drew me in, and I haven't really given his other music much of a chance yet, but I'll have to give it a shot. I believe that's the band that he did with Slash, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So that does interest me, and I remember hearing the one song and thinking it was pretty good. So I'll have to give that a shot, and I will let you know when I give it a listen. Now, a movie-related question: which comedy movie pre-2000 do you think needs a sequel the most? Midnight Run. Midnight Run is one of my favorite comedies of all time. They leave it open where you could easily go back to that character with the sequel, with Robert De Niro playing it and only Robert De Niro playing it. And they were actually supposed to make a sequel to this movie. A couple of years ago, there was some movement going on it where him and Charles Grodin were actually attached to star in it, and they were going to be having some kind of a new, like a younger comedic star. I don't know if it'd be like Chris Pratt or, you know, Sean William Scott, who plays Stifler whenever he was big, somebody like that, to be kind of his new mark, you know, his new person that he has to go run down. And to me, that movie just is comedy gold, and they could easily do a sequel to that and not have it feel like it has been too long, because older, grizzled Jack Walsh that would be comedy gold in a sequel. You know, you could see Robert De Niro just slipping right back into that role and being that smart-ass, hard-ass, you know, just cussing everybody out, take no shit character, and it would be fucking hilarious. He still has it in him, and I would love to see a sequel to Midnight Run. Ashley Grady asks, have you discussed your favorite movie of all time and why, or your favorite genre, or how the horror genre has just unfortunately plummeted? So, first question, your favorite movie of all time and why. We were just talking about it a minute ago. My favorite movie of all time is the original Die Hard. And the reason why is because that's a movie that I can pop in anytime, any day, and no matter what, no matter how many times I see it, I love it. I laugh my ass off. I love the action, and it never gets old for me. It's one of the few movies that I can watch. Like I said, I can pop it in with somebody who's never seen it and watch it like it's the first time I've ever seen it before. You know, from beginning to end, that is one of the few perfect action movies out there from start to finish. You know, you have Bruce Willis, that really on the top of his game with that character. all of his attitude and all of his humor with that character in the first movie is just golden. One of the best villains you're ever going to see in a movie, period, with Hans Gruber. And just everything about that movie I love. There's nothing in that movie that I can ever pick out that I think they could do better. That's just absolute perfection to me. So the first Die Hard is my favorite movie of all time, and that's why. Favorite genre is pretty difficult. I would have said comedy when I was younger, but comedy's kind of a slim pickings nowadays as far as things that'll actually make me laugh. And I would have said the same thing about horror, which I'll elaborate on here in a second. With horror movies, I used to grow up on, and that was my shit. And nowadays, like I said, just like comedies, it's very slim pickings with the ones that are actually good. I really don't have a favorite genre because all movies are different. You know, I could love comic book movies, and then I could walk into a crime thriller or something like that and love it just as much. But as far as the movies that I probably get most excited to see, I'll say crime thriller, because they usually, nowadays you don't see too many of them, so when they do come around, I'm usually excited for them. So I'll say crime thriller, but tomorrow I might say comic book movie, I might say action movie, I might say something else, so that could always change. Now, how the horror genre has unfortunately plummeted, I don't know if it's plummeted or if it's just kind of moved where a lot of your quality is coming more out of foreign movies. Now, I'm not a good person to ask about that because I don't watch a lot of foreign movies, probably to my own fault. I don't like subtitles at all. As many times as I try to give it a chance, it just drives me nuts. I find myself staring at the bottom 10th of my TV and I never look up to anything else that's going on. So there's a lot of foreign horror movies that get a lot of buzz and a lot of movement that I never really give a chance because I don't want to read subtitles. Old Boy. There's a lot of movies that get remade. When The Ring was remade, The Grudge was remade. There's movies like House of the Devil, and a lot of the movies that I see on these lists nowadays where it's like, best horror movies of the year, there's only maybe one or two of them sometimes that's American. The rest of them are all foreign. So I think the foreign market's really taken over on the horror genre. As far as if the American horror genre has plummeted, I think it's because, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I think it's because they've realized they can make horror movies for absolutely no money. You have movies like, or studios like Blumhouse. Now, Blumhouse is famous for making movies for chump change. They make movies for less than $1 million or just at $1 million. And they'll triple or quadruple or make 10 times their budget the first night the movie's out in theaters. They made The Purge, they made movies like Oculus, and they make a bunch of other horror movies that come out nowadays. And it's both a good thing for horror because they can make more and more of them and not wait around for a big budget to get these things into production, but it also, for some of them, is kind of detrimental because they have such a low budget that they don't get any good writers, they don't get any good actors, they don't get a good director, and you get movies like The Boy, and you get movies like The Forest. And it's really hard nowadays to find good horror movies, and I think a lot of it, like I said, it's the writers and the directors. You always expect decent to bad acting in a horror movie. It's almost it's almost part of the genre, but a good director and a good writer for a horror movie make all the difference. I mean, look at James Wan. He makes the Insidious movies, he makes the Conjuring movies, and those are, some of the best horror movies that we've had the past 5 or 6 years, and they've all got his name attached to it. So that's what I'll say as far as the horror genre. I'm not sure if it's plummeted. I think it's just kind of moved regional. Brandon Chenko asks, what's the favorite movie you have ever let someone borrow and didn't get back? That's a funny little story. If I had to say a favorite movie that I let somebody borrow and I never got back, well, there was this one time where I had this guy that I worked with and I worked out with, and I tried to introduce him to a lot of movies, being the kind-hearted man that I am. And I handed him stacks of movies once in a while, and about a year after that, I had my girlfriend Holly, who I had just started dating, come over, and I said, you know what, I want to watch True Romance with you. It's a movie starring Christian Slater, a movie starring Patricia Arquette. It's the only movie that I know of that Quentin Tarantino wrote but did not direct, It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of the best movies of all time, directed by Tony Scott. If you haven't seen it, stop listening to this right fucking now and go watch it. And I go to my shelf, I go to Tease, I find True Romance, I pick the movie out, I open the case, and I got Remember the Titans stare me in the fucking face. And I think to myself, who was the last person to take True Romance out of my shelf that was not me? And then I remember, old Brandon Chanko. So, True Romance is the answer to your question, you little dickhead. And I'm still waiting on that movie to come back. Even though I bought a new one, I still have my empty case sitting over here waiting for it to be filled. So, waiting on you to bring that over there, buddy. Well, that about does it for this episode, guys. This has been the Cody Leach Podcast. Thank you as always for listening. Go ahead and like and subscribe on SoundCloud. Leave any comments or questions you have on this episode. And any viewer questions you have, I will either answer in the next movie news episode, or I will do a separate Q&A episode if I get enough of them. You can also leave these questions below when I post these episodes on Facebook. But thank you for listening as always, and I will be back.